The renovation was supposed to be simple. Strip the wallpaper, fix the floorboards, and have the house ready before Halloween. But when Eli's hammer broke through the plaster, everyone froze. Inside the wall wasn't just dust and wiring. It was a skeleton. Not a fossilized relic, not dry bone. It was warm, like something that had just been breathing minutes ago. Emily felt her skin crawl as a faint heat pulsed from the ribs, and something wet glistened inside the skull. That night, when the house fell silent, she swore she heard the sound of bones sliding behind the walls, like something assembling itself again, piece by piece. The Carters had bought the old Victorian at the edge of Maple Hollow because it felt like a fresh start. The house was enormous, its gables sharp against a gray autumn sky, and Emily loved the way the afternoon light passed through the stained glass windows. Jacob said it only needed a little work, but when the contractors tore down the living room wall, that illusion cracked with the plaster. Eli, the foreman, was joking about hidden treasure when his crowbar hit something solid that wasn't wood or pipe. Everyone leaned closer. A puff of dust drifted out, carrying a smell too metallic to be old. Then the hole widened, and through it they saw a skull staring back. Not brittle or yellow, but ivory pale and slick with condensation. Eli stepped back, swearing under his breath. Emily thought it had to be a prank, maybe a Halloween prop left by previous owners. But when Jacob reached out, his fingertips came away damp and warm. "It's impossible," he whispered. The room seemed to tighten around them. Mia, their daughter, peered from the hallway, eyes wide. "Mom, is it alive?" Her small voice broke the silence like glass. Police were called. Photos were taken. The officers looked as uneasy as the family did. "Probably been here a long time," one muttered, though his tone wavered when Emily said the bones were still warm. They promised to send it to forensics, but the skeleton was sealed inside evidence bags and loaded into a van before anyone could really examine it. As the sirens faded, the house felt emptier, yet heavier. That night Jacob couldn't sleep. He sat in the living room with a single lamp on, staring at the patched-up wall. The air still carried that faint metallic tang, and sometimes, when the heater clicked, he thought he heard the dull sound of shifting weight inside the plaster. Emily finally came downstairs, wrapping her robe tight. "Come to bed," she said, but her voice trembled. They both turned when something thudded softly behind the wall. Deliberate, spaced like footsteps. Jacob pressed his palm against the fresh plaster. The warmth returned, stronger this time, as if the wall itself had a pulse. Then came the faintest scraping, bone against wood. Emily grabbed his hand and pulled him back, whispering, "We need to leave." But before they could move, a line of dust trickled down from a crack that hadn't been there a second ago, and through it came a breath of air, humid, almost alive. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, carrying the sound of something hollow rattling in the dark. Inside, the house settled again, quiet except for one echo, the faint clatter of bones rearranging behind the walls. Emily woke to the sound of scratching. At first, she thought it was rain against the window, but when she turned, the glass was dry. The noise was coming from inside the wall, faint but steady, like nails dragging along the wood. She froze, listening. Jacob was still asleep beside her, his breathing deep and even. Then came another sound, a soft click, like joints locking into place. Emily's heart thudded so loudly she feared it might wake Mia in the next room. She slipped out of bed, bare feet cold against the floorboards, and pressed her ear to the wall. Beneath the wallpaper, something was moving, slowly, purposefully. Down the hall, Mia's night light flickered. Emily crept toward her daughter's door, whispering her name. "Mia!" No answer. When she pushed the door open, the light bulb burst with a sharp pop. The room plunged into darkness. She reached for the switch, hands trembling, and then she heard it again. The sound of bones sliding, scraping against the lath inside the walls, circling the room like a predator tracing its prey. A faint rattle came from behind Mia's dresser, followed by the unmistakable creak of the floorboards bending under invisible weight. "Mia, honey, wake up!" Emily whispered urgently, pulling her daughter from bed. Mia stirred, half asleep, mumbling, "Mom!" "He's whispering again." Emily froze. "Who's whispering?" she asked, but Mia's eyes were glassy, unfocused. "The man in the walls. He says he wants his house back." Emily's pulse spiked. She scooped up her daughter and hurried down the hallway, the shadows stretching long behind them. When she passed the living room, she saw Jacob standing near the same wall that had hidden the skeleton earlier. The lamp flickered in his hand, throwing pale light across his face. "It's warm again," he said quietly. His expression was distant, almost hypnotized. "I can feel it breathing." Emily tried to pull him away, but he didn't move. From behind the wall came a hollow groan, low and resonant, like air being forced through a throat that shouldn't exist. Then the drywall cracked, a thin vertical split that crawled from floor to ceiling, and through it seeped a faint red glow, pulsing like a heartbeat. Jacob stumbled back, clutching Emily's arm. "It's not over," he whispered. Dust rained down from the ceiling, coating their hair. The sound of shifting bones filled the air again, closer this time, heavier. Emily grabbed Mia and ran for the front door, but when she pulled the handle, it didn't budge. The deadbolt twisted on its own and locked. From inside the walls came a voice, low, gravelly, and impossibly close. "Don't open what you cannot rebuild." The air turned cold enough to burn their lungs. Behind them, the cracked wall shuddered, and something long and white began to push through. A hand made of bone, reaching toward the light. By morning, the house looked normal again. The cracks were gone, the air still, and the walls cool to the touch. Jacob insisted it had been a shared nightmare. Stress, exhaustion, and overwork. Emily wanted to believe him, but the memory of that voice still clawed at her thoughts. She couldn't shake the image of the bony hand reaching through plaster. Mia wouldn't leave her room, clutching her stuffed rabbit and whispering, "He's still here." When the contractors returned to finish repairs, they found the patch from the previous night perfectly sealed, as though no damage had ever existed. "We didn't do this," Eli said uneasily, running his hand along the smooth surface. "Someone's been here." The men worked quietly after that, refusing to linger past sunset. By evening, Emily noticed Jacob had grown pale and distracted, his hands trembling as he studied the wall. "You're not still thinking about it, are you?" she asked softly. He didn't answer. That night, he dreamed of bone dust swirling like snow. He stood in an endless hallway of white ribs, a heartbeat echoing through it. A figure emerged, a man made entirely of bone, his skull cracked and glistening, his hollow sockets glowing red. "You built over my grave," the thing rasped. "Now I will build over yours." Jacob jolted awake, drenched in sweat, the words still echoing in his head. When he went downstairs for water, he noticed something strange. The tools the workers had left behind, the hammer, the saw, the drill, were all laid out in a perfect skeleton shape across the floorboards. The air shimmered faintly around it, like heat rising from asphalt. He bent closer and felt warmth radiating again, just like the night they found the bones. Then a voice spoke behind him. "Finish what you started." Jacob spun around, but no one was there. Only the walls, breathing, expanding, contracting like lungs. The wallpaper rippled, and faint impressions of skeletal hands pressed outward from underneath, stretching the surface like flesh. He stumbled back, his heart racing. When he looked again, the hands were gone. By morning, Jacob was different. His eyes were sunken, his tone distant. He spent hours in the basement with blueprints and tools, muttering under his breath. When Emily brought him breakfast, she found markings etched into the concrete. Circular patterns, symbols she didn't recognize, drawn in what looked like rust or blood. "What are you doing?" she asked. He looked up slowly, a faint smile twisting his lips. "He's showing me how to fix the house," he said. That night, Emily woke again to hammering, rhythmic, mechanical, steady. She crept downstairs, expecting to find Jacob repairing something. But when she peeked into the living room, her breath caught. Jacob wasn't building a wall. He was opening one, and inside the hole, something was waiting. A skull grinning from the darkness, its eye sockets glowing faintly red. Emily screamed Jacob's name, but he didn't react. He was kneeling before the open wall, whispering to it like it could hear him. The skull inside flickered with that same red pulse, faint but alive, and for one dizzying second Emily thought she saw veins, threading through the bones like roots spreading through soil. Jacob lifted his hand and pressed it to the skull's forehead. "He remembers me," he murmured. "He said I promised to rebuild him." His voice wasn't his own anymore. It carried a weight, a resonance that didn't belong to a living man. Emily ran forward, yanking him back by the shoulders. The moment she touched him, a surge of heat burned through her palms, as if the wall itself rejected her. She stumbled away, gasping. "Jacob, listen to me. You're not making sense." He turned toward her slowly, and she saw it. A faint shimmer of bone beneath his skin, ghostly outlines that glowed when the light hit just right. His veins pulsed faintly red, the same rhythm as the skull in the wall. Mia appeared at the top of the stairs, clutching her rabbit. "Mom," she whimpered. "He's talking to the house again." Before Emily could respond, every door in the hallway slammed shut at once. The lights flickered violently, bursting one by one until only the orange glow from the skull illuminated the room. The air thickened, pressing against their lungs. Then, from within the walls, came a sound like hundreds of bones rattling in chorus. A hideous, rhythmic clatter. The house began to move. The wallpaper rippled, boards groaned, nails popped from wood. The entire structure seemed to breathe. Dust poured from the ceiling, coating everything in a fine gray film. Emily grabbed Mia and backed toward the front door, but the floorboards warped under her feet, curling upward like fingers. She tripped, clutching her daughter close as the voice returned. Deeper now, everywhere at once. "You took my body. Now I'll take yours." Jacob stood motionless, staring at the wall. The skull's jaw creaked open, a hollow scream echoing through the house, shaking the glass in its frames. Emily pressed her hands to her ears, but the sound wasn't just noise. It was inside her skull, vibrating through her bones. She felt her vision blur, her pulse sinking with that impossible heartbeat coming from behind the wall. Then the house went silent. Jacob turned slowly toward her, his expression calm, too calm. His pupils had shrunk to tiny pinpoints, and when he spoke, his voice was layered. His and another, older, deeper one speaking through him. "He's awake now," Jacob said softly. "He remembers what they did to him." Emily's knees weakened. "Who?" she whispered. Jacob smiled faintly. "The ones who built over his grave. The ones who sealed him in." Behind him, the wall pulsed once more, and the skull began to move its jaw, whispering something in a voice that wasn't human. "Begin again." Emily barely recognized the man standing before her. Jacob's skin looked translucent in the flickering light, veins pulsing faintly beneath the surface, like rivers of molten ember. The wall behind him split wider, boards snapping as something forced its way out, long, ivory limbs clawing their way into the open air. The skull's red glow deepened into a burning crimson, veins of light racing across the ceiling like lightning trapped under the plaster. Emily grabbed Mia and ran toward the kitchen, but the floor heaved beneath her, rising and falling like a chest taking shallow breaths. Cabinets opened and slammed shut on their own, utensils rattling in drawers. The air grew damp, heavy with the smell of earth and rot. As she pulled her daughter close, she realized the wallpaper was moving again. Not just rippling, but growing, spreading upward in twisting, sinewy patterns like muscle fibers weaving through bone. From the living room, Jacob's voice echoed, though it no longer sounded entirely human. "He's rebuilding himself," he said, reverent, almost joyous. The house was his tomb, but now it's his body. Emily stumbled toward the front door, only to find it gone. In its place was solid wall, smooth and pale, faintly warm to the touch. She screamed and pounded her fists against it, but the surface yielded slightly, like flesh. Behind her, Mia whimpered, "Mom, it's breathing." The walls began to close in. Beams creaked overhead. The sound of splintering would mixing with the steady rhythm of a heartbeat pulsing through every surface. The chandelier twisted downward, its arms reshaping into bone-like branches. Dust cascaded from the ceiling, and the windows bled thin trails of dark liquid. Not blood, but something thicker, darker, almost tar-like. Emily pulled Mia toward the stairs, desperate for higher ground, but halfway up, the steps shifted beneath them, stretching like tendons. A voice whispered through the walls, each syllable vibrating through the floorboards. "You buried me alive. You built your comfort over my coffin. Now you will live inside me." The words were everywhere, crawling through her skull. She covered Mia's ears, shouting back, "We didn't do this. We didn't bury you." But the house didn't care. It remembered only pain. Jacob appeared at the bottom of the stairs, eyes glowing faintly red. His smile was wide, unnatural. "He forgives us," he said softly. "He just wants to be whole again." Then, before Emily could move, a rib-like structure burst from the wall and wrapped around Jacob's torso, pulling him in. His scream was swallowed as the wall closed, leaving only silence and a faint heartbeat echoing through the house. Mia sobbed into Emily's shoulder, trembling. "Mom, he's part of the house now," she whispered. Emily didn't answer. She could already hear it. The steady rhythm under the floor, the walls pulsing faster, hungrier. The skeleton wasn't rebuilding the house. It was rebuilding itself. By midnight, the house had stopped pretending to be a home. The floor breathed. The walls pulsed. Every board, every nail, every inch of plaster had turned into something living, something aware. Emily moved through the hallways in darkness, clutching Mia's hand so tightly the girl winced. "Don't let go," she whispered, though her own voice shook. The air was thick and warm, humming with a low vibration, as if the house had a heartbeat of its own. They reached the upstairs landing. The wallpaper had peeled away to reveal what looked like bone beneath, curved and ribbed, flexing when she brushed it. "It's closing us in," Emily said under her breath. Down the hall, Jacob's voice drifted faintly through the air. It wasn't human anymore. Layered, hollow, echoing through the house like it came from the walls themselves. "Emily, come downstairs. He wants to see you." Mia's eyes filled with tears. "That's not Daddy." Emily forced herself forward. The staircase was no longer wood. It pulsed under her feet, soft like muscle. Each step left a faint print of warmth, as if the house was feeling her. When she reached the bottom, the living room had transformed completely. The walls were gone, replaced by a vast cavity lined with bones and tendons, a grotesque cathedral of flesh. In the center stood Jacob, or what was left of him. His skin shimmered with a thin layer of white, his ribs showing through like armor. His eyes burned crimson. "He's free now," Jacob said, smiling faintly. "He wants to keep us, to remember us." Emily shook her head, tears streaming. "You're not him anymore." She looked around for a way out, but every doorway had sealed into smooth, breathing bone. The only light came from the center of the room, the skull, glowing bright as a furnace. Its jaw moved slowly, whispering in a tongue older than words. Each syllable sent ripples through the floor, and Emily realized the house wasn't just alive. It was listening. She grabbed a fallen crowbar from the floor, one of the last remnants of the renovation, and charged at the wall near the front door. The surface screamed as metal hit bone, spraying gray dust that smelled like decay. "Let us out," she yelled, swinging again and again. The skull's glow flared violently, and Jacob lunged toward her, his voice overlapping with the entities in a hideous duet. "Stay. Become part of the foundation." Emily swung the crowbar one last time, driving it through the glowing skull. A blinding flash erupted, shaking the entire house. The walls shrieked, the floor buckled, and Jacob screamed as his body disintegrated into dust. Emily grabbed Mia and ran, the house collapsing around them in a roar of splintering bone and cracking wood. They burst through the front wall. No door, just open air, and fell into the wet grass outside. The house groaned behind them, folding inward like a dying beast until nothing remained but smoke and ash. Emily held Mia close, trembling, watching as the glow finally faded. But just before the last light went out, a faint voice drifted through the wind. The same whisper that started it all. Begin again.